Hello there and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and on this week's show I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the James Watt and Georgia Toffolo of the Terrace get together? That's right, we are going to debase ourselves by featuring in some of the most bottom of the barrel social media content you can imagine, hold some awful political opinions, show ourselves as both unappealing and out of touch, and then we're going to get married.
Now, I don't really follow either of these people, but I am kind of aware of them, and I suppose ultimately that's why I don't follow them.
Well, Shaughan, do you remember a couple of years ago when I introduced us as the Fred and Rose of the Terrace? I actually think that was a more favourable comparison than the James Watt and Georgia Toffolo. They really are. They really are the worst couple since that the Gloucester-based builder and his mad wife came on the scene.
Was Georgia Toffolo on Celebrity MasterChef, or have I made that up?
She certainly won I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
Oh, there you go. That's impressive, I suppose. I mean, neither of us would win that if we went on.
Yes, definitely. I think that most people are like, who? And I think you would see a Google spike in Shaughan McGuigan. It'd be like the time when you try to find out if there's ever anyone called Shaughan with the same spelling as your name, and then just that massive spike of people like, who's Shaughan McGuigan? Oh, I've heard of the show, I've never seen it. Is it any good? Not really, but he seems nice. He's getting stuck in to get everyone their rice and all that. So
I did like your question last week. Fair play on that shift that you done on the Reddit. Ask Me Anything. I think you must have been there for about 3.5 hours.
I was.
With the question about was it shag, marry, kill?
Yes.
And you would shag Joel for his body, and rightly so. But you said you would marry me because I'm just a nice person.
Yes, I think you and I would get on the best. It'd be a purely platonic relationship. I think that I think I would buy a big cross to put right between our beds in the twin room that we'd share, much like. What are their names? Morecambe and Wise?
Yes, they very often there would be scenes where they would share a bed. And bear in mind, this was like, whatever it was, the 70s. You'd think that people would question that more, but actually that wasn't the case at all.
It feels like if that was there, if people protesting out the BBC, some people that's got like, imagine somebody's Twitter bio, Terfy McTerfface or someone like that. That's the sort of thing they would do. It's a mind virus, isn't it? It's a total mind virus. People that are like really transphobic. You see them online, and that's all they talk about. There's tons more stuff to talk about, such as lower league Scottish football. There's a segue if ever there was one. Now, Shaughan, you and I are going to be rounding up the big games in the lower leagues from the past 7 days, so it's a bit of a grab bag, and there's really not much we can do about that when there was a series of pesky midweek fixtures ruining our plans. But we're looking at a couple of the championship games from Tuesday night, focusing a bit on our Arbroath travails in League One, and thank goodness for good old League Two, just giving it to us straight. We'll be looking at the match between Stranraer and Stirling Albion. And before we get going, Shaughan, can we just check in and ask how you are doing?
No, I'm very well, thank you. What about yourself?
Yes, radiant, splendid and tremendous, but not so splendid and tremendous when I've got to kick off the show with some corrections and clarifications from last week's show. And to be fair, this is actually more of an addendum than anything else, because in last week's show we spoke about Darren Lumsden, the disgraced contestant of The Chop, Britain's top woodworker. And for anyone who didn't listen to last week's show, this was a Sky History show from 2020 that was pulled after it was discovered, and let's be honest, the word discovered is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. It was discovered that the aforementioned Darren Lumsden had a number 88 on his cheek, which is a white power symbol. You don't need me to tell you that 88 is often associated with Adolf Hitler. But Lumsden defended the tattoo by saying it was a tribute to his late father, who passed away in 1988. Turns out his dad's very much alive.
You're just making it worse.
This is after reading about the furore. I went back and did a bit more reading about it after we recorded the podcast. He was interviewed by The Independent about his son's appearance in the TV show, and this is what his father said: is that Trevor, who lives in Bristol, the same city Darren lives in, told the newspaper he did not know about his son's tattoos or that he was appearing on television, but added, "If they are saying that I am dead, I'd like them to know I am not."
Who was the footballer that said he couldn't turn up for international duty?
Oh, Stephen Ireland.
And he said
That's
his
right.
gran had died.
Yeah, but then he changed his mind, saying not his mother gran that died.
And she was alive as well.
Yeah, no gran had died. He just didn't want to do it.
Fair play.
This is a man who had angel wings tattooed on his back and drove around in a baby pink Land Rover.
Listen, we're all different. We're all different.
Different world. But listen, enough about face tattoos, enough about maternal grandparents or paternal grandparents dying or not dying, as the case may be. Enough about angel tattoo wing, Shaughan. Let's get stuck into it because there's a lot to crack on with here. Plenty to discuss from the Championship of the weekend, but it feels as though it's been superseded by Tuesday night's matches.
Yeah, very much so.
That's where we'll turn our attention. 3 midweek games played. Shaughan, you watched one and I went to the other. So I think we'll start by looking at Airdrieonians win over Raith Rovers. It ended a 1-0 to the Diamonds. Lewis McGrattan with an absolutely tremendous goal to win the game. I just literally watched the highlights before jumping on this Riverside call with you. So I suppose it's, what did you think of this match? I mean, brilliant. Oh, sorry, just before we go on, I got to say, I mean, that's Airdrie, 4 wins and 2 draws from their last 6 matches. And just 7 points now between them and Dunfermline in the playoff place. And crucially, they've got a game in hand. Tell me your thoughts on this one.
I was impressed by Airdrie, but in terms of the most predictable encounters between 2 teams in Scottish football, this must be the most. And in fact, I don't even just mean outcome in terms of Airdrie winning. I don't even mean the most predictable scoreline. So that's now 5 times since the start of last season that Airdrie have beat Raith Rovers 1-0. But it's actually how the entire game pans out. So there's been at least 3, maybe 4, but maybe just 3. I would have to go back and check where the game itself is exactly the same. I feel like I've sat through this game a number of times now. Well, I have, literally, over the last couple of seasons. And it's you have a first half that is goalless, where there is not much between the sides, not much to discuss or to kind of write home about, very few goal-mouth chances. But the longer the game goes on, the more the momentum seems to swing towards Airdrie. And Raith seem to have no answer to it, no way to try and shift that back towards them. And Airdrie always score with approximately 15 minutes remaining and then keep Raith Rovers at arm's length for the remainder of the game. That's exactly how it panned out last night. I expected it based on 2 things. Firstly, in terms of Airdrie, I was impressed by them in the second half against Partick Thistle. I thought maybe on another day Partick could have got 3. Partick Thistle could have got 3 points. But in terms of how Airdrie kind of dug in, got themselves back in the game in the second half, I was pretty impressed by them. And secondly, how poor Raith were against Hamilton. It very much felt like a shift back to the norm, as you would expect from them this season. Yeah, they got the win, but they were poor against Hamilton on Saturday. So I did go into this fearing the worst. Yes, it was a predictable outcome. But in terms of, obviously it wasn't what I wanted to see, but I was genuinely impressed by Airdrie.
I mean, what have you made then of Airdrie's transformation at the beginning of the season? Because I mean, you've played them. What's that? 3 times. 3 times you've played them, and you beat them on certainly once of those occasions. So they won on the opening day of the season. You beat them the following time, and this is their time. So what have you made of their evolution from, say, that midpoint in the season when they were really, really struggling to where they are now, where they really are perhaps most informed team in the division?
Certainly one off. See, if you go back to that second game, I can't remember when it was played. Was it maybe November? And I said at that point, I can't remember.
End of October.
Right, there you go. So they certainly would have been on single figure points at that point. They might have been on about 4 or 5 actually. And I remember coming away from that game thinking, my goodness, they are every bit as bad as Arbroath were last season. And bear in mind how kind of lamentable Arbroath were in that championship in the last campaign. But it's probably, in terms of this rebound and the fact that they have given themselves a fighting chance. They might have been 14 points behind 9th recently. The fact they've given themselves a fighting chance is very, very impressive. And I know there has very much been Airdrie fans who have said, well, it's down to the kind of injury crisis that they've had. And that absolutely comes into play, that points have maybe had 9 or 10 players out. That would affect any team. Don't think it's quite that simple though. I think the the injuries have almost cleared, albeit Mason Hancock was missing again on Tuesday evening. But definitely the majority of those players are back, so that helps matters. For example, like Aidan Wilson at centre half last night. I think that was his first appearance. He started the game, which I thought felt like a risk when you've been out for so long. He was very, very good. So, for example, you've got players of that quality returning. So that helps matters. Suddenly they have a bench to call on, for example. But there's players that maybe they brought in the summer that are only now, for whatever reason, whether it's to do with an increase in confidence or finding their feet, whatever it is. But like Chris Mockery now appears to be like starting to come onto a game. He was good last night. Has been very hit and miss this season, and probably more miss than hit. Ben Wilson, like there was people, Airdrie fans suggesting that Ben Wilson could be like another Ali Roy, somebody who scores goals in the League Cup but then doesn't score any in the league. I think he might be on 14 for the season, and I think that there was a double concern about him. Might be an Ali Roy, and he might just be a kind of penalty box striker. Which if you're playing in a team that plays one up front and doesn't create that many chances, that's no ideal. You need to have more you have more strings to your bow. You need to be able to lead the line. You need to be able to drop deep, occupy defenders, run channels, do all that. And again, it feels like it's taken him, whatever it is, 5-6 months to maybe to be able to do those kind of things that you need if you're leading the line on your own. Certainly, he didn't score last night. He didn't score on recording this on a Wednesday, so he didn't score on the Tuesday evening. But I was still impressed by his all-round game. And I suppose the last reason I think they're certainly starting to kick on and give themselves a chance is that I think they've had a pretty impressive January transfer window. Yeah, like I think Strap was a good signing. Again, I thought he'd done pretty well on the left-hand side on Tuesday night. It was funny. I was worried about his long throws, but he doesn't take any at this moment in time because he apparently damaged his shoulder recently. But it didn't matter. I'll just still beat us anyway. But as much as Aidan Wilson at centre half had a very good game, see Alex Bannon alongside him. My goodness, I thought he was a colossus. Like they've brought him back up the roads from Burton Albion. I thought there was a number, as far as I'm aware, there was a number of teams in for him. I'll be honest, I was surprised they went to Airdrie. I thought that most of the teams in that kind of wedge in the middle of the championship would have been interested. Maybe even somebody in the top three if they were desperate for a centre half. I thought he was a possibility for them. So I was surprised he rocked up at Airdrie. But the best player in the park last night by an absolute mile. And I think he will be arguably a key and maybe kind of turnaround signing for them, I suppose.
I suppose in Bannon's case, now I don't know how often he played at Burton Albion, but say if you've been playing fairly regularly for Queen's Park, you get a big move down south of the border and it doesn't work out for you, then all you want to do is just play football. And that might be for a team who are struggling like Airdrie. It might be for a team like, I don't know, like Dunfermline or Hamilton, who are equally as in poor form. But I suppose if you are going to get game time, and just like, it sounds a bit of a cliche, but just like fall back in love with football, then it doesn't really matter where you're doing it. And credit to the Airdrieonians board and credit to Rhys McCabe as well, because you could have been in the position where you just think, well, we're going to get relegated. We'll go down with the same group of players and we'll not bother turning it over, not bother spending the money that needs to sign like Lewis Strapp, to pay to get Rico Dyack in and loan and so on. But they've done that. And it looks like it could mean we're going to come on and talk about one of the teams who are, based on last night's performance, are fucking finishing beneath them, let's be honest. But it's a bold call to do it, and it looks like it could pay off with how many 10, 11 games left to go.
That also feels like, I suppose, unless they are with this agency, I don't think they are, but maybe they are. It feels like a deviation from, we've spoken in the past about the fact that they, certainly in terms of the summer transfer window, inexperienced guys, they didn't replace the experience that they lost last season. They have so many players that are with this kind of Concilium agency. But Lewis Strapp, like we know he is a good championship player. Bannon had already impressed at this level with Queen's Park, who does, maybe they're learning their lesson but a wee bit too late, but they've certainly given themselves a chance.
Yes, I'm going to just go quickly, just go on to Transfermarkt and see, is it, no, he is at In Motion Sports, according to Transfermarkt. So who knows, maybe that was just a change in strategy. It was just like, you know, when you play Football Manager, you can click in things to sign like all players of a certain age or all right-footed players. They just switched off the Concilium Sports filters, like, wow, there's fucking tons of players we're able to sign. Wow, Reece McCabe's just, wow, look at this. Alex Barron, get him in. Amazing. What about the Rovers, Shaughan? I mean, they followed up, they said they weren't fantastic against Hamilton, albeit they won that match 2-0. What would you make of their performance?
It was I surprised at the kind of outcry on Pie and Bovril afterwards? No, maybe not. I didn't think it was quite as poor as it was being made out to be. It certainly wasn't good, put it that way. As I said, they matched Airdrie for the first half. Maybe even were slightly the better side without ever really testing Kieran Wright. Certainly, the second half, Airdrie had the upper hand. But I think it comes down to the fact that ultimately, in terms of the players that Raith have available to them at this moment in time, it is very much a bog standard, mediocre championship team. I think Barry Robson is a far better manager than Neil Collins. The more I think about that Collins appointment, the more it just feels like such a waste of time. Like there's probably a bit more clarity for the players, and ultimately it comes down to the fact that they kind of play the same way every week. It's generally the same personnel that play every week. Now maybe that isn't a great thing, but that's generally the case. And I think that the players know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Under Collins, it would go from a back three one week to a back four the next week in terms of how they would start. But then they'd probably start poorly and it would get changed at half time. Those things aren't happening now.
It just goes to show you when you actually manage in a football league where there is promotion and relegation, you're not the head coach for the San Fernando Oilers or whoever it is that he was playing for. You know, that then when you actually, there's a bit of scrutiny that you can fall apart. One of the things I did want to ask you about, Shaughan, was I noticed that Josh Ray's coming on loan from St Johnstone. He's displaced Kevin Dabrowski, and I always think when that happens, when a new manager comes in and one of the first things he does is sign a new goalkeeper, that doesn't paint the predecessor in particularly good light. What have you made of Josh Ray's coming in to usurp Dabrowski, and was it merited?
Yes, I didn't necessarily agree with it at the time, as in, like, if there was the budget to bring in one more player, was the goalkeeper position the one that was key? I maybe thought that was maybe third or fourth in the list of things that they had to bring in. I would have thought a striker that could run the channels and occupy defenders might have been, for example. However, I do think that it appears that the defence have a lot more faith in Josh Ray than they did in Dabrowski. It's interesting that after that Celtic game, they didn't face a shot at goal against either Partick Thistle or Hamilton. Okay, Airdrie had 2 or 3 shots last night. Josh Ray had one good save, one very good save, but definitely in terms of defensively, and I think in terms of a kind of organisation perspective, Raith looked far better under Barry Robson than they did under Neil Collins. The problem is, in front of that, there is just a dearth of quality. And if Dylan Eason is having an off game, as he always seems to do against Airdrie, and very much did last night, then there is nothing linking kind of midfield to up front. And as much as Jamie Gullen has had praise recently, and rightly so, he's done pretty well. Finlay Pollock has certainly scored goals. Not entirely sure about his all-round play, but certainly scored goals and has had a lot of praise. And again, he warrants it. But last night there was very much nothing on show. Like, Pollock was anonymous, Gullen tried, was willing, but achieved very little, and Easton was kind of just swamped by Airdrie's midfield. So I do think that sums up where we are, and it kind of feels like there is a big clear out required in the summer. And although maybe a big one wasn't required last summer, there was certainly a turnover needed to be done to that squad, and it feels like it's probably going to happen like 12 months too late. Like, this season's going to be a bit of a waste, ultimately.
Yeah. Up next, Ayr United are taking on Airdrieonians at Somerset Park.
I still think Ayr United will have too much for them, but I think it'll be reasonably reasonably close, but I do expect Ayr to take all 3 points.
I wonder who Scott Brown will pick in goals for this one.
Who knows? It could be anybody from 4. He'll probably roll a dice or something to pick it.
Straight on the phone to Celtic, you got any goalkeepers you can loan us, please? And he's saying it in earshot. These cunts are fucking useless. Like he's turning around and Robbie Much and Harry Stoner. You should see this fucking lot I've got here. Turning around, deliberately speaking louder so they can hear him.
I kind of, honestly, could not believe he blamed the keeper for that Muirhead free kick.
It's an amazing goal. It's one of the goals of the season. How on earth do you save that?
Terrible, just terrible management. He's done a lot right this season. I thought that was really poor.
Yeah, and Raith Rovers are playing Queen's Park at Starks Park.
So I'll tell you what I think will happen for the next 2 weeks from a Raith Rovers perspective. I think we will beat Queen's Park, and then I'm fairly certain it's the following weekend, play Dunfermline, put a loose to Dunfermline. I think that's what will happen.
Fair play. Now, Shaughan, the match that Raith Rovers took part in the weekend, 2-0 win over Hamilton Academical. What did you make of the Ackies in that game?
They had plenty of possession, but never threatened it remotely at any point in the game.
Okay, well, flip that round where they didn't have much possession, but they created loads of chances, and you're effectively describing their 1-0 win over Dunfermline on Tuesday night. Stuart McKinstry scored the goal midway through the second half. It was a bit of a 6-pointer, relegation 6-pointer between the teams, and I was there, Shaughan, so by all means, if you want to ask me any questions about last night's match, so this is recording this on the Wednesday, this is the game on the Tuesday, the match between Hamilton Ackies and Dunfermline at the New Douglas Park, crack on.
I suppose the first thing I must ask you, and I'm probably being a wee bit selfish here, we did exchange messages before the game where you said that you hoped the complaints about the Hamilton board would be extremely vociferous and resemble where I can't remember what the Italian game was, where they dropped the Vespa from the top tier, but it feels like that probably didn't happen.
No, there was a walking to the game. When you go down past the Morrisons and you go under like an underpass where the car park is. There was a young team in front of me and they were singing "Rankin get to fuck, Rankin get to fuck." A ball hadn't even been kicked and they're already chanting that. So I was thinking, my goodness, this is going to be quite spicy. So like Jeremy Bowen, a BBC war correspondent reporting from the Middle East, I took a seat quite close to the home dugout just in anticipation that something bad might happen, like some sort of grotty voyeur. And funnily enough, at half-time, a Hamilton fan, who I didn't catch his name, but he listens to this podcast, I was speaking to him for about 5 minutes. He asked me, "Are you sitting here because you're expecting something bad to happen?" I was like, "Actually, yeah, I am, mate. You've caught me out. You've caught me out." But I've got to say that there was times in this match where it just feels as though John Rankin can't do anything right. There was, not long after kickoff, the chance of Rankin get the fuck started from the younger guys that sit on the left hand side of the main stand, and anytime Rankin would come out to like talk to a player or pass on instruction, folk would just shout at him, "Oh, get back in your fucking box." He was trying to shout instructions at Dean Linus, the goalkeeper, and somebody said, "Did I fucking listen to him, Dino?" It's just, see if you were John Rankin. I mean, I'm not saying that, like, I'm not disagreeing with the fans, because we've all been in that position where it's just at the point where, like, this isn't working, we need to change things, and you're just fed up, and the ill feeling is just like Rankin's become a lightning rod for all that ill feeling towards the board and how the team are managed and so on. And it just feels like, how could you be bothered? I can't imagine Rankin, I mean, is a particularly wealthy man, but surely he's a proud man. And why on earth would you want to just be in that environment where folk are just shouting at you all the time?
I do suppose it's very difficult to walk away from a multi-year contract. Bear in mind, he got an extension not that long ago, surprisingly. So he did. Got an extension.
So he did. So if I went out to pass on instructions to Regan Tumulty and somebody called me a cunt, then I'd just be like, well... It just goes with the territory. That's football for you. But yeah, that was the field for John Rankin. And it's particularly in the first half. There was moments in the first half where Dunfermline put them under a wee bit of pressure. And it just feels like I don't want to speak to it because it's not everyone. Like, let's be honest, it's not everyone in the crowd. It was like a couple of shouts, but enough shouts to make you think you're going into the game palpable of the dislike towards them. You're at the game and you hear enough shouts about it. But it does feel like they wanted something bad to happen to get angry about and direct it towards John Rankin. And I think, well, fortunately, because obviously you want to see your team win, but certainly they didn't have the opportunity to do that here, because ultimately it was quite straightforward for Hamilton.
So in terms of the game, so I've watched Dunfermline's highlights, which are 13 minutes, so you get it feels like you get a decent idea of the game. Again, I suppose similar to Airdrie versus Raith, didn't look like there was a huge amount of quality, or even maybe that much between the teams, until Stuart McKinstry scored his goal in, I think it was the 63rd minute.
I think you're probably right there, Shaughan. You're probably my impression of the game. I thought Dunfermline started well, and I thought they were the better team for about 20 minutes or so. But Hamilton had a good chance. It was a header. It was like Dunfermline couldn't quite clear a corner. The ball was put in, cleared out, and somebody clipped it in, and it was Scott Robinson put a header past the post. He just let the ball come over his head and flicked it. It just went past the post, and that really seemed to be the turning point for them. And it was really in the second half. I think they had a couple of chances just before McKinstry scored, and pretty much from that point on, it was that there was only one team that were going to win. I thought McKinstry had a really good game. He was playing wide left, and just I think he's exclusively right-footed, because he certainly, I'm saying he's exclusively right-footed. I don't think he touched the ball with his left foot once, but all he wants to do is create space for himself and ideally come onto his right foot, or maybe go down towards the byline. Thought that Ollie Shaw missed a load of chances. That was the big criticism. I think they could have won that about 3-4-0 had he been more assured of himself in front of goal. He did a lot of stuff good. He can play with his back to goal. I think he's quite adept at running in behind, but just in front of goal, you saw the highlights, you saw the number of chances that he missed. And I thought that as well, Rankin actually, in a rare change, got his subs right. I think that by bringing on Kevin O'Hara with 15 minutes to go, Ewan Henderson with 10 minutes to go, they were the perfect players to come on and see the game out. Guys who are strong runners, guys who are energetic, guys who are just happy to chase down lost causes. And from that point, Dunfermline found it quite difficult to get out. And Hamilton played well, but Dunfermline, no.
So what about Dunfermline? Because this felt like, bear in mind they were ahead of Hamilton. This felt like a great opportunity to move ahead of a struggling side, and this looked like a dreadful performance from them.
It absolutely was. I mean, I think their goalkeeper, Toby Oluwayemi, was their best player, and I think that really sums up. He made a couple of really good saves. Every time I see him, actually, I think he's quite a good goalkeeper.
There was a moment, and there was a moment where he came so far from his goal to mop up a goal. He ended up in Hamilton's half.
Yes, that's a good sweeper keeper. That's what I'd describe it as. That is someone who's good at reading the danger. Aye. But I thought he was the best player, which really sums it up. And I think in the first 20 minutes, I was like, wow, they actually look really good. They've got a boy playing for them, Jeremiah Chilakola Mullen. I don't know if you know this guy. Yeah, the centre-half. Yeah. He's a boy they've got on loan from Leeds. The first 20 minutes or so, he was dribbling the ball at defence. He was really all action. And it was like, this guy actually wants to be like a number 10 rather than a central defender. And it was actually great to watch. But the further the game went on, you realise, that's where like dribbling out of defence and running into people, just failing to pick passes and getting pushed around a bit by Ollie Shaw. I think that he struggled as the game went on. I thought Tashan Oakley-Booth, he really needs to toughen up a lot. The number of times he went down looking for fouls that were never on, that you're not going to get in Scottish football. So it's like you need to get in a wee bit. And Ephraim Yeboah didn't really offer much up front at all. I mean, he's only 18. He's on loan from Bristol City, but he didn't really give him the out ball he needed. And even guys like you can kind of count on, like a guy like David Wotherspoon, didn't he really do much in the game? The only player I thought was good, Oluwayemi was good. Archie Stevens, boy they've got on loan for Rangers, looked quite good in the wing. But just other than that, I think it was the kind of performance that Dunfermline fans, if that had been a James McPake performance, a Vespa would have been thrown onto the pitch. But it's like at the full-time whistle, on Twitter where they put the graphic, which is like full-time with the graphic saying they lost 1-0, all the comments were saying, can we not send this guy back to Kelty? And it feels like for Michael Tidser has come in, the team aren't any better than when it was in. I mean, let's be honest, the best time they've been this season was when Hollywood John McLaughlin, who, by the way, used to play for Hamilton. I don't know if you're aware of that. When he was in charge, that's the best they've looked, and they've feels like they're just doing the same stuff they did under McPake. A lot of the ball passing sideways, a lack of penetration up front. Connor Young, who they spent a bit of money on to sign from Edinburgh City, he came on, first time seeing him since he's joined the Pars. They were playing him as a right midfielder and looking for him to come on his left foot. Just look at what he was doing at Edinburgh. Play him as a centre forward and get energetic people around him. That's what he was at his best doing. He's a skillful player and wants to get the ball on his left foot, but don't isolate him out wide. Just get him inside the penalty box. And it feels as though that you get like one chance to make a first impression. It feels like that we've not seen that from Michael Tidser. That's 5 games now without a goal as well, and the team feels like they're in a pretty bad place at the moment.
Did you happen to either read or hear Tidser's post-match interview? It wasn't with Dunfermline TV. What Dunfermline, I think I get the impression what they do is they record the actual interview with the journalists and then put it straight on their website, which, but as far as I'm aware, not too many other teams do. I do like the fact that it sounded like they edited out the word fucking.
Yes.
Which is, and fair play to them, it's a family website. Now, there is a suggestion that Tidser has chucked his players under the bus. What did you make of his interview in general?
Let's see, I'm just trying to find the bit in my notes, because I did make some stuff there, yeah, where I say like the players are going through the motions, some of them are too comfortable, including some of the newer players that have come in. That's pretty damning, and I suppose I'm going to assume that he's told the players all this as well. Like, he'll have spoken to them in the dressing room and said, you're not trying, you're going through the motions, too comfortable and so on, and I'm going to tell everyone about that. So they'll know it's like a rock up their arse. You can't go to a place like Hamilton and just be as passive as that, because there's Hamilton were certainly like aggressive. Hamilton wanted the fight. You know, for all the faults about John Rankin this season and about Hamilton looking like less than some of the parts, they were the better team for about 65 minutes of that game. They were the better team. The second half especially was pretty much played out as they wanted it, you know, game management and so on. Dunfermline just a lot of problems there. And I mean, that's the first time in a while where it's the first time I've actually been to see them this season. I've seen them on the telly. I mean, I was against Falkirk when they drew 3 each with them. They were actually pretty good.
Decent.
They were pretty good in that match. He certainly had the stomach for the fight. But here, like we were talking about guys like going down looking for injuries, boys just running into trouble. Just toughen up. That was it. Toughen up and just get wise to the division. And because you can't get away with these things. They were so open, particularly in that second half. Hamilton, got to say, poor in front of goal. Ollie Shaw, we mentioned, had passed up some really good chances, but they had enough chances to win about 2 or 3 games there, and that was a lot of it came from Dunfermline just not doing simple things.
See, the only thing I'm not sure if I was overly keen on in terms of Tidser's post game stuff, other than his swear word, obviously. But see, he was criticising the players, and you're right. I was okay with that, but I think he maybe said 3 times, "I'm doing all I can." I'm doing all I can.
Oh, it's dangerous.
I was like, oh, you're kind of. It feels like you're trying to remove yourself from.
That's right.
Being accountable.
There was two. Remember, there was 2 bits that I noticed where he said, like the coaching staff. You know, I can give them all the instructions I want, but when they cross the line, it's down to them. Mm-hmm. And there's another thing he said there about that we coach them and we look really good when we're coaching, but when it comes to the match day, it's like we're not doing what I'm passing on. And so that's on 2 occasions you're saying, God, I'm trying so hard here. I'm trying so hard, but the players they give me nothing. They give me nothing. It depends how the players take that, and it depends how, because there's some players that'll be like, geez, this is embarrassing to get. They'll go like, I'm going to show this manager that I do have the stomach for the fight. I'm going to show him. Or you can just be like, you know what, I'm only here on loan. You know, I'm 18. I can put this down as a learning experience and go back to wherever I'm. I'm using your boy as an example there, but I'm going to go back elsewhere and can go somewhere else. I think that signing loan players is it's always a tricky thing. Always a tricky thing because you never know how it's going to go. It must be amazing if you're a loan player for a team that's winning, but if you're pitching up there, always in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, "Well, I play for a much bigger club than this." I'm not really.
In fairness, it did seem to work for them. Like this time last year, it felt like they brought up a number of players from down south. I can't remember their names. There was certainly a couple from Cardiff, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
They put in a stinker of performance. Maybe I think they lost 5-1 to Morton, and I was like, my goodness, they're in big trouble. But actually, after that, they seem to gel and kind of maybe understand what was required of them when it comes to Scottish football, and they kind of kicked on and ended the season reasonably well. So maybe, but I just wonder if the calibre of players that they've brought in this winter transfer window is quite as decent as it was last year. I'm not so sure.
Well, when I'm thinking, the guy who I thought was certainly impressed me to be Chilakoa Mullen. That's the sort of stuff that you would want to see from a defender, someone who's just like really good on the ball. He's a quite a strapping young man, and it's making the mistakes like dribbling out of defence is class, but don't overrun the ball and make sure you release it earlier. Like play with your head up. Be a bit more careful when you distribute. It's we've used this expression a lot of times, Shaughan. It's like having quality young players on loan is great. The downside of that is they're having to learn their trade on your dime, and unfortunately, Dunfermline's dime also includes a pretty difficult relegation battle. So I think this guy, he might probably not what Leeds United are looking for, but someone that can go on and have a good career because he's quite eye-catching and good to watch. But those mistakes, they're being made against in a 6-pointer against your local rivals, and based on that match, based on the fact that they can't score, based on the fact that they're not creating many chances, that they're wide open in turnovers, and that's against a Hamilton side who the supporters don't have much faith in their manager. It's not great. And then you're coming up against an Airdrieonians side who seem rejuvenated after the window. It seems like Rhys McCabe for being able to keep that group of players together and keep them focused against a manager who has very publicly ousted his players like that. Aye, very, very interesting to see what happens next with Shaughan. Hamiltonakis versus Falkirk at the weekend.
It has to be a Falkirk away win, doesn't it?
Yes, I would say so. I think that was the last time we did a podcast that they played each other on the Friday night. Falkirk were 3 up by half time.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a sore one. And Dunfermline Athletic host Green at Morton. Morton, certainly up until the weekend, had been in great form, but then they're playing Falkirk and Livingston. They lost both games back to back. But Dunfermline, you'd imagine they will look as that a fixture they can get their mojo back.
Maybe. I suppose I have seen the highlights of Livingston Morton. Obviously, Livingston won 3-2 on Tuesday evening. The big concern for Morton was how do you score without, obviously, Stuparevic has had an ACL. He's left the club altogether. Adeloy, I'm not entirely sure what his injury was, but he's missed the last couple of games.
Just as he was beginning to look good as well.
Just as he's beginning to look good. So they were worried about scoring goals. Funnily enough, they did score goals against Livy. It was at the other end over a kind of 6-minute period. The issue was I will sit on the fence and go for a point each.
Very good. Very good. We'll move into League One and we'll talk about the league leaders Arbroath. They were in action on Saturday and again on Tuesday. And a bit of a mixed bag for them because they lost the game on Saturday to Stenhousemuir, losing that going down 2-1 at Oakview. Blair Alston and Ross Taylor giving the Warriors the win there. But they bounced back by beating Kelty Hearts 2-1 at Gayfield. Scott Stewart and Andy Winter scored in between a nice goal from Ross Cunningham. And they have returned to the top of the table, 43 points, just 2 points ahead from Cove Rangers and Stenhousemuir, and they're all having played the same number of games. Shaughan, did you watch the match against Stenny on the Saturday night?
Now, I was slightly frustrated because Left starts Park on Saturday, and I was like, right, so what I'll do is I'll go to the Abbots Hall for one game, for one drink, and then I was very much keen to watch Stenhousemuir and Arbroath on BBC Alba. Walked into the Abbots Hall, and there was a weird mixture of kind of happiness, but also kind of frustration, because I walked in and there was one of my best pals who I've not seen for a while and his wife. And I was like, this isn't going to turn into like a drink. I'm going to end up getting blethering away. Oh, no seen you for ages. What have you been up to? Oh, you were on holiday. You were in Greece recently. Blah, blah. Oh, then you went to Poland. Blah, blah, blah. No seen you since. And then, so kind of finished the drink. And I was like, I'd really like to go now. And then my pal was like, right, what you want? And I was like, oh dear. Ended up watching the rugby, which we weren't really that fussed about what. Anyway, regardless, I got home for about the last. It was 1-0 when we got the telly back on in time to see the second goal from who was it? Ross Taylor. Got the second goal.
Well,
so only seen about the last 50 minutes. I have watched the highlights. The highlights are fairly brief.
Yeah, well, don't worry, Shaughan. I've watched this match twice, so between the two of us, we can meet in the middle. So your lack of knowledge meets my too much knowledge. We'll balance one another out. I don't think it was a particularly good game. I think that I imagine since BBC Alba started broadcasting, you could probably count the good games that have ever been shown on that channel on one hand. But I think it was a game where we're going to focus on Arbroath here, because let's be honest, we're doing two consecutive games. It was a kind of game where they just never really got going, and they had a couple of good chances at the start. Aaron Steele had a shot that just went over the bar, probably should have scored it. Andy Winter had a forced Darren Jameson to save at the near post. But after that, I thought that the Stenhousemuir were probably the better side without being outstanding, and it really came from Scott McGill, who, by the way, has turned into a pretty handy player for Stenhousemuir. Scott McGill and Michael Anderson really shutting down Sam Stanton and Fraser Taylor and not allowing them to play. And then, the opening goal comes from a really bad mistake from Aaron Steele, and the second goal comes from like a corner, which Stenhousemuir specialise in right at the very end. So it's the sort of thing, a lot of the fans on Pie and Bovel were saying how bad Arbroath were. I don't think they were terrible. I just thought that they missed their chances. It was a mistake that let Stenny into the game in the first place, and then they just never really got going. But we see games like this. So you see games like this all the time. There's games that happen like this. We'll have been to dozens of them this season, and there's games happen like that up and down the country all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Steele's mistake for that opener felt almost inexplicable in terms of how he dealt with the cross coming in from so it would have been the right-hand side.
Yeah.
It almost looked like he used the wrong foot to try and clear it, kicked it off his own hand. I don't know if the referee maybe contemplated a penalty if Blair Olsen hadn't been behind him, but regardless, Blair Olsen finished it. But it was a dreadful error. Yeah,
it was. I mean, I think that I feel a bit sorry for Aaron Steele, because the impression that I get, and this is just my impression, is that Colin Hamilton and David Gold just don't fancy him. They just don't fancy him. When they took over from Jim McIntyre, he was sent on loan to Stenhousemuir, and they did well for Stenny. I think that we were all quite disappointed that they had to go back. Turns out Stenny have upgraded by bringing Sam Fisher in on loan from Dunfermline, who had a very impressive debut. But he comes back into the team, scores against Inverness Caledonian Thistle. The commentator makes fun of him for some reason, and then he plays in this game, should have scored, gives away a goal at the other end, and then between the game on the Saturday game and the Tuesday, Aaron Muirhead signed on loan from Partick Thistle to play at centre back. So it just feels like that they don't fancy him, but they don't want to loan him back to Stenhousemuir because you're strengthening a rival by doing that.
But David Gold certainly seemed like really that. I get it. That it's a really disappointing 2-0 defeat at one of your title rivals. But he seemed really downbeat in that post-game interview.
I actually thought for a second, if I close my eyes, am I listening to Colin Hamilton here? But no, it was actually David Gold there. He was just saying that pretty much what you and I have said there. The team just weren't able to play. Stenhousemuir were the better of the two sides and just really, really disrupted them. And sometimes you can have that. Like I saw again. I'm going to parrot a post in Pie and Bover there, but somebody was talking about Sam Stanton. Sam Stanton's like a great player, but he's not going to be I don't really think he's a sort of like a galvanising force. He's not going to like score you like 10 goals a season or anything like that. He'll work well within specific systems. That's the impression I get from him. The ball carrying midfielder can galvanise a team, but he needs the other players around him. And I think with Fraser Taylor being off, you can maybe give him the excuse that this is what only his second season of playing regularly, so he's entitled to have wee dips in form. And I mean, you come up against somebody as tenacious as Mikey Anderson, who will just like scrap with you throughout the entire match and just be right on top of you. It's not going to always come off of you. And similar to what we were talking about when we were talking about Dunfermline's loanees, this is problem solving. You're going to have to figure out a way to how to play when the game's not going in your favour. And unfortunately, this for Arbroath, certainly, this was one of the games where it just didn't really go in their favour.
And what about so that didn't go in their favour. I suppose what did happen on Tuesday evening was a game did go in their favour. The 2-1 win over Kelty Hearts. I've kind of, I haven't scrutinised the 7.5 minutes. I wondered if they would get back on track, kind of lay down a marker, win that game convincingly, considering Kelty have not had their kind of worries to seek of late. But again, it didn't feel like a convincing win. No,
certainly, again, reading the post from Pie and Bovril and going by the commentary as well, they had Bobby Lennon co-commentary, and the consensus between what I read online and what the commentators were saying was that it was, and Colin Hamilton's post-match interview, taking all those three things in consideration, it was like very much as a job done, get up the road, or, well, they were already up the road, but sorry, do you know what I mean? But just like job done. You're playing against a Kelty side who will keep the ball for fun, aren't perhaps the most. They're not particularly prolific. They're not going to carve out a load of chances, and that's an issue that Charlie Mulgrew really needs to deal with. I saw, again, going by that post that was on Twitter after the defeat, everyone's saying, can we send this cunt back to Kelty Hearts? I saw one person who's a Kelty fan saying, yeah, we'll take him back and swap him for Mulgrew, you know.
He looks really fed up, doesn't he, Mulgrew?
I don't know.
Based on his post-match stuff, he does a lot of kind of huffing and puffing.
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't see anything from it. I suppose I just ran out of time. I only had about an hour to I'd done some research last night and just a wee bit today, so I didn't get a chance to see it. We'll probably talk about Kelty just shortly, but I suppose for Arbroath, if you've just lost to your title rivals and then you're winning at home, you're struggling a little bit, and they pull a goal back, and it was a well-taken goal from Ross Cunningham. Actually, both goals were quite similar in terms of they're both hit from pretty much the exact same spot, and the ball had the exact same trajectory, and the goalkeepers both did the exact same thing and just watched it sort of go into the net. But then to come away from that by just going to the park, and you've got to say massive slice of fortune in Andy Winter's goal with Tamil Ware. I think he tries to head of the ball back to Rory Adams, but it seems he heads it onto his shoulder, which just lets the ball run, and it's really good anticipation from Winter for an easy finish. But that goes back to, we're speaking about Kelty Hearts, but when we spoke about them last week it would have been, where we said just a lot of their goals have just come from bad luck in terms of the goals they're conceding, and that there's another one. Your captain, you're probably the most experienced player in the park, making a mistake like that. That's just unfortunate. But there's Arbroath are there to capitalise, and sometimes when you look back over the course of a season, this is a cliche. Cliches are cliches because they're often true. But you look back over the course of the season and you can be like, that we lost to Stenny, but you followed it up straight away by beating Kelty Hearts. No one will care about the performance. It's all just about getting the win and going back to the top of the table.
And I know we predominantly wanted to concentrate on Arbroath, and we very much have. But see, based on the last, whatever it is, 5 days or so, so the win over them on Saturday, the decent 3 points, but not a decent performance, I suppose, against Kelty. How much encouragement does that give you for the, whatever it is, 10, 11 games left?
It's simple. We were talking about this in our Stenhousemuir WhatsApp group chat. It's basically all in Stenny's own hands, because you just win all your games. I know that's probably not going to happen, but all you do is just win all your games, and you'll have won the division. We've got to play Arbroath again and Cove Rangers again. So if you beat them both, and then you can deal with the rest of the sides, then you win the division. So it's very, very difficult to expect. But I do think Stenhousemuir can win the division. That result on Saturday, I thought that Stenhousemuir, I always thought, coming into this stage, when Stenhousemuir were top of the table, I thought, wow, this is amazing. I think we can win it. But I'm trying to think anything else came out of that meeting. I spoke to Gary Naismith, I asked him what his best 11 is. What do you think your best 11 is? And then told him I thought I'd much rather see Matty Yates in there ahead of Blair Alston. And he didn't say anything. Just sort of like was kind of looking at me as if to say, and just the more I spoke, the more I wish I had a time machine that I could turn back the last 30 seconds, so I didn't need to say this.
Do you know why he didn't say anything?
Because he thinks I'm talking shite, but he doesn't want to be rude towards me.
Yes, exactly that. Just shut the fuck up.
They're not here for my opinion. They want to hear what the manager says. But honestly, build a statue of him. There we go. I mean, great guy and a great result. But yeah, not to get too far away from Arbroath, I think that it's going to be really tasty going into the end of the season. I think that Arbroath, Stenhousemuir, Cove Rangers, they've all beaten each other at points this season. I mean, there's Stenny have got 2 wins against. I've beaten them both twice, but then have lost quite comfortably twice. The last time, that 4-0 defeat against Cove Rangers was pretty harrowing. So they're good players. I think Cove as well. We talked about them maybe not strengthening, but bringing back like Adam Emsley feels like a really good move. He was quite a popular player there. And if they can keep saying Blair Yule, Connor Scully, Fraser Fivey, Mitch Megginson, if they can keep these guys fit, then they'll be a strong side come the run-in. So a very, very exciting division.
I still think that Cove are the one that will that I probably most expected to drift away. Like even full time, I still think they maybe have a wee bit less quality than the other 2 involved. But listen, who knows? Who knows?
But up next, because we focus on Arbroath, a pretty favourable run of fixtures to cement their lead at the top of the table, and at home, Dumbarton away.
6 points from 6.
6 points from 6, yes. We will finish up this podcast, Shaughan, by looking at Stranraer's 3-0 win over Stirling Albion at Stair Park. This is our featured match from League 2. 2 goals in 2 minutes towards the end of the first half from Kirk McKnight and Elliot Dunlop put the Blues ahead. And then rock and roll, Robbie Foster scored his first goal for the club in the 93rd minute. As Stranraer are motoring along quite nicely. 4 wins from the last 6 games has them in 7th place with 30 points. Stirling Albion remain as confounding a side as ever. But that was one of the most frustrating and inconsistent sides in the lower leagues at the moment. They're in 5th place, but like the likes of the Spartans, Stranraer, they are closing in on them. Shaughan, immediate thoughts on Stranraer 3, Stirling Albion 0?
This might have been as convincing as I've seen Stranraer in a long, long time. I was really, really impressed by them. That I know, certainly watching the comprehensive highlights as ever. I thought they started the game very well. Then Stirling Albion maybe had a kind of 10-15 minutes, and I think it was Brian Martin that said that the Stranraer's opening goal kind of came against the run of play. But I do think in terms of how the first half panned out in general, Stranraer were kind of worthy leaders. Then of course they immediately went 2-0 up. The second half felt a bit more kind of rat-a-tat in terms of both teams at each other. I think Josh Lane in the Stranraer goal had a good game. Gaston, maybe less so, but regardless, still pulled off some saves. I thought it looked like a really good game, but maybe one of the better Stranraer performances I've seen this season.
I think so. I mean, and I think so. And Chris Aitken thinks so as well. He was absolutely delighted with his side's performance and delighted about the fact that someone other than Mark Russell was scoring the goals. It's something that he's actually mentioned a couple of times in his post-match interviews, that the other players need to step up. And McKnight, I think that might have been his first goal of the season. Might I think.
And just an amazing way. I love this goal. Just an amazing way to do it. So the cross comes in from, I think it's Finn Eckerpont.
Yep.
And the way he adjusts his body to, because I think it's intentional. It's absolutely intentional. He adjusts his body and chests it in. Is it kind of at the front post?
He's at the front post. He sends it. Gaston can just only watch it go in.
Tremendous.
It was like, I mean, it's like Didier Drogba. Instead, it's like this skinny wee guy who sounds like a stuntman. You know? It's like genuinely looking at Kirk McKnight, he's like, how are you, sir, able to generate that kind of power with your chest? You're built like a skill.
Your stupid pigeon chest.
I mean, that I love that goal as well, but I love the second goal. And I'll tell you what I love the second goal about is, I mean, describe the goal for those who haven't seen it. It's a channel ball from a Metro point again, and Robbie McNabb misses his header. Ryan Edgar goes through and goal, and he times it perfectly, because just to slide it across the face of goal for Dunlop to hit at the back post. What I loved about this goal, again, praise Stranraer highlights all the time, and they really added to it, but it's the angle behind the goals. And just, it's like on the horizon, just this tiny wee speck getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger towards the camera, and just there, then the ball slid across the face of goal, and there's Dunlop to put it. I mean, what a run! Considering that Edgar was up there himself, to have that wherewithal to just to just think there's something on here that I can help with, and to sprint right down the face of goal and then get on the end of it. It's great endeavour from Ryan Edgar. Brilliant hold-up play. Brilliant to take advantage of McNabb's error, but great dig from Dunlop to get back in there and finish.
So I enjoyed that. There was another two things I enjoyed about the goal. First is, like, Ryan Edgar's angle, I do think he was in two minds about, I want to score here.
Yeah.
I think I can score. Like almost like it was glitching. And then eventually they took the best option to square it to Dunlop, and fair play.
It's funny you say that, because Grant Gallagher, who was in commentary for this one, said the exact same thing. He said, like, that's something we've got to tell him in training, is like, you know, like find a man, don't shoot all the time. And just, sorry, on that, the commentary, Lawrence Nelson was unavailable for this fixture because he was on a road trip through East Kilbride.
Just away for the weekend, presumably.
But I mean, I know Grant Gallagher was injured, so that's why he joined commentary there. And I think for everyone who tunes into Stranraer TV regularly, get well soon, Grant, because we can't wait to see you back in the pitch.
But see, the other thing I was going to say about this goal is, so there was three people in commentary. There was Brian Martin, there was Grant Gallagher, and I'm really sorry, I forget his name, but there was
Cammy Ritchie.
Yes, I think he's like maybe a kind of local journalist or whatever. But see, as Ryan Edgar runs in, all three of them start kind of yammering.
Yeah.
Three of them just start going like daft, like saying, shoot, square it, shoot. Like there's like a kind of cacophony of the trio, all very, very funny. But yes, not as good as when Lawrence Nelson is available.
I just thought that because the frame, we're all obviously just see the frame, they can see the full pitch, but the fact that like Dunlop just comes into frame just as the ball's released, so he's not there loitering. He's like, it's like you're thinking there's no one around Edgar. He's going to have to go himself here. No, there's his pal who's just ran from the halfway line to poke it in.
It's like when was it the 4-3 Liverpool game against Newcastle and John Barnes picked out Stan Collymore?
Yes.
It just like appeared in the corner of the TV. It was similar to that, but on a far less grand scale, I suppose.
The biggest disappointment of the game, I think it was Dunlop had a goal disallowed from offside in the second half, and what made it so disappointing was Scott Robertson. I don't know how he does it. I watched this back a couple of times. The pass that he puts through for him, it's like it puts spin on it to send it in front of him, but bring it like backspin just to bring it back in front of him. And sadly he's offside, and I think it was correctly flagged when you see it on the replays, but that pass, like, unfortunately counted for nothing because it deserved a lot better than that.
And another thing that got a lot of attention and traction, I suppose, on the Saturday evening was the ball getting stuck in the tree.
Yes.
That was very high in a tree.
And then later on in the match, they've noticed the ball still stuck in the tree.
Listen, it's daft. It made me laugh.
For all we know, that ball is still stuck in the tree at Stranraer. I just imagine that tree there, the tree's covered in leaves, the leaves start flaking away, the tree's covered in snow, and that ball just being stuck there. I think it's going to be Stranraer's equivalent of the statue with the traffic cone in its head in Glasgow.
Stranraer TV will probably have a camera on it now, and they'll just film it through the seasons. They'll release, they will release a kind of 12-month fast forward video of it, and it'll be enticing. Not
as enticing as Robbie Foster getting his first goal for the club.
Class. Dr. Foster, as Brian Martin. Is he a doctor? I don't think so. I think he was just referring to a nursery rhyme, but I honestly don't know.
I like Foster. I think has been perhaps a bit hard done by at points over the course of the season because he has worked really hard. He's worked. I mean, we've covered games on this podcast where he looks like he's worked really hard, but he's just the finishing touch hasn't been quite there. And I mean, let's be honest, he was about 2 yards from goal. The finishing touch almost wasn't there when he had to kick it against the post before it went in. But what I really liked about this was just how delighted everyone was for him.
Yes,
all his teammates, they almost felt like they were coming around all one at a time to thank him. The fact that when it showed you the replay, you know, like, go on yourself, Robbie, and go on, big guy, and stuff like that. That's class. That's really good to see him.
I literally have that in my notes as well, because I wondered, like, I find them quite frustrating to watch at times. I don't support Stranraer, so presumably Stranraer supporters find them quite frustrating. And I do sometimes think he maybe takes the wrong decision. So maybe I thought maybe his teammates find him quite frustrating. But the fact that you're right, almost every single player was kind of lining up to congratulate him and kind of pat him on the back or pat him on the head. I found that quite heartwarming.
I think Stranraer will know better than me, but for going by the highlights, it looks like a useful player there.
Yeah, but you're right. He's raw. Yeah, I suppose might be the kind of term I would apply to him.
But you hear the cliche all the time that sometimes you just need a goal to go off your backside, and that's you for the rest of the season. I think he'll score one more between now and the end of the campaign.
I was thinking as well, like his finish was so bad. Like it was like you're a yard and a half out and it's kind of went in off the inside of the post. I'm not entirely sure that this is something that is going to kind of get you off and running, but I hope it does.
And Stirling Albion, I mean, we mentioned them having good spells of pressure in the game, but just and for actually forcing Lane into a number of good saves, but just frustrating. That's how I describe frustrating, because we speak about them fairly often, and we've covered them like we did them when they beat someone. Oh fuck, I can't remember. There's that many games. But Fowler and I talked about them when they lost to the Spartans, and just saying how kind of dismal they looked there. And this feels like a similar kind of performance where you have chances, you don't take them, and then you're ultimately punished. I mean, there's the 2 goals coming in. It's bad enough 1 goal coming before half time, which obviously alters everything, particularly at that stage of the game. But 2 goals like that, and I don't know. I mean, I was looking at Ryan Shanley's performance, and I think when he signed for Stirling, I thought, whoa, that's a really good piece of business. I'm not sure.
Yeah, funnily enough, so I had a wee look at his season as well, and obviously he didn't get too many minutes at Falkirk. He managed 1 goal at Falkirk against Bucky. I think he's managed 1 goal for Stirling Albion against Forfar. Other than that, he's done very little. He may have one assist to his name, and whether it's just a carryover, I suppose, from Falkirk, where maybe his confidence is low. Maybe if he could do something like Robbie Foster, scuff one in from a yard and a half, maybe he can kick on from there. But you're right, I thought that was a good signing, and it hasn't quite worked out. But it feels like there are forwards at Stirling Albion that haven't performed or got the numbers that we thought they would. And that's an issue. And then at the back, where maybe you think they'd be fine, but like when Sula went off injured, and then like I think it was Robbie McNabb that was moved from midfield to the back. I think that affected him on Saturday as well. But we spoke about Stirling Albion right at the start of the season and said this might be a kind of transitional season. And I'm not entirely sure if such a thing exists. But in terms of, I know there's Stirling Albion fans who are annoyed at Alan Maybury, and maybe things aren't going how they expected it to. But I did expect Stirling Albion to be mid-table. Like, they won't get sucked into anything at the bottom of the league. I don't think they're quite good enough to, in terms of quality of squad, I don't think they're quite good enough to get involved in the playoffs. So they are kind of where I expected them to be. I'm not saying that Maybury doesn't deserve any criticism, but it's just been a kind of, I suppose, similar to Raith Rovers, that kind of mediocre nothing season. Yeah,
but I suppose then if you're serious about going into the playoffs and challenging for the top 4, you have to beat Stranraer. That's no disrespect to Stranraer, that's just the place in the food chain. And you remember at one point where you're thinking, well, it looks like it's between them and Edinburgh City to finish 4th, and it feels like I'm not going to spend another half hour talking about Michael McIndoe again, as much as I'd fucking like to. But it feels as though like Edinburgh's aspirations, and I think Edinburgh were probably going to look to try and win that title. Yeah. You know where they are now and how that season's progressed. Edinburgh are going to try and win the league, and if the football gods are smiling on them, they might get the opportunity to do that. Whereas Elgin, you've probably got to try and catch Elgin, but the thing is, Stirling just don't really seem to be able to put together that consistent run of results that you need. Maybe it's a case you sometimes, if you're within touching distance of the playoff, if you can go on a wee run at the end where you just get 2 or 3 wins that just take you up the table. I just can't see Stirling Albion getting those 2 or 3 wins.
No, I totally agree. And maybe we're kind of worried about the finances, I think, in the summer. And maybe they'll be able to recruit. I felt like they were recruiting very, very young players last summer. And maybe they'll be able to do something different for next season. But I'm certainly not surprised at how this season has panned out for them.
Edinburgh City versus Stranraer up next. And if you remember the last time Stranraer scored the 93rd minute winner last time they met at Meadowbank.
I am going to go for Edinburgh. If anything, somehow they've got better since Connor Young left, so I will go for a home win. Yeah,
really good come from behind win up at Elgin City. And well, we might as well talk about Edinburgh just since seeing as we're here. But that I think that's a sign of maturity. If you remember the last time they beat Spartans at home, and we spoke about the podcast, they went away to Bonnyrigg Rose and lost, and that seemed like an inevitability. Like you can put in a great performance, but then when it comes to playing like on a shite pitch against a hard team, you can fold there. Similar, I mean, Elgin, Borough Briggs is in far better nick than New Dundas Park, but still it's like the long distance mentally, it's like a whole day away that you're travelling to a long distance, and to go there, to go goal behind, but then to dig it out, that there's not many teams that are going to do that. I say there's not many teams. I would need to check the stats from... Remember folks say, Borough Briggs is a hard place to go, and you look at their stats and they've lost every game. There,
3 home wins.
3 home wins all season. Just because it's outside the central belt, therefore it must be a difficult place to go. I don't know. But I do think there's grounds in Scotland that have got a bit of a psychological thing to them, and I do think Borough Briggs is one of them. So to go up there and to come from behind to win 2-1, sorry, that's really impressive, and it shows the maturity of the team and why I think they will look to try and win the division now, particularly with East Fife and Peterhead drawn at the weekend.
I agreed, but they won't quite be able to do it. But what I would say is I wouldn't put it past them winning the playoffs, and the fact that we both agreed that they would finish rump last this season, that's incredible.
Here's a shoot. I think they can win it. I think they can win the league.
Too much to do, surely. Surely, goodness.
It's the same sort of thing. They need to get better against East Fife because they lose to them all the time. But if you can beat the big teams, that might be the downfall, that you're not able to beat them. And they had quite a sticky start to the season. But I do think they can win it. If they need a lot of luck, but I do think they can win it.
I'm sure Alan, is it Alan Moncrief?
Yes.
Alan Moncrief, yes. I think he put a post up on Pine Bover where he said, for the last 10 games, they'd probably have to win 8 and draw 1 of the last 10 games.
Well, I'm not hearing any evidence to suggest that they can't do
that. Okay, fair play.
And Stirling Albion welcome East Fife to Fourth Bank.
I will go for, it'll be an away win. It'll probably be 1-0 and Alan Troughton will score a penalty.
Have you read my notes? Well, Shaughan, we will leave it at that. I think that was all right, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, now, if you didn't already know, A View from the Terrace is back on TV and iPlayer. The first episode of the new run went out on Friday. I actually thought it was really good, if I don't mind saying so.
I thought so too. I enjoyed doing it, and certainly the feedback was pretty positive, so that's good. Yeah,
it felt good. There's times when I watch it back, and just because you're watching yourself, and it's different to recording it from how it is to actually watch it back, I can sometimes cringe a wee bit and wonder, why did you say that? You got a wee bit carried away. But I think that the bits where I thought I got carried away, they were all taken out of the show, so I looked absolutely fucking brilliant. So Jordan Laird, Andy Mass, if you're listening, thank you very much. You've done me a good turn. But this time, Shaughan, you are unfortunately not here for this one.
No, but these things happen. I don't know if we're allowed to say it, so I won't mention them, but there is a very special guest, and I always feel jealous when I don't get to meet them. So I'm a wee bit annoyed at that, but these things happen.
Yes, it's Tom Stoltman's brother. We've got him on the show, so... No, we're kidding on. We're kidding on. If you want to find out who it is, you're going to have to tune in to see it, but it's going to be really good. I'm looking forward to it. Myself, a special guest, Robert Borthwick and Tony Anderson. So,
what a lineup!
What? Yeah! Wow! What a lineup! Yeah, not my words. The words of Shaughan McGuigan. Now, not only is A View from the Terrace back into your TV screens, but Shaughan and I are going to record a bonus podcast. We're going to finish the trilogy. Which manager would you most like to go for a pint with? And we're going to be looking at League Two. I'll say this. We've got a definite number 1 and we've got a definite number 10, and you could have dumped the other 8 in a big sack and pulled them out at random and it would not have made a difference to this list.
I think even if you'd listened to 3 podcasts ever, even just randomly, you will know who is going to be 10 and who's going to be 1.
And it's safe to say, if Shaughan and I can get to 20 minutes during this record, we'll have done well. Can we make it to 20 minutes? There's only one way to find out. Go to patreon.com/Terrace Podcast and do subscribe. It's well worth your money because, in all seriousness, there is hours and hours of content going up there. There's one that just dropped earlier today. Craig Fowler speaking to an East Fife fan, looking at the state of play at the top of the division. So it's one thing myself and Shaughan going by match highlights and things we've read on the internet. But imagine hearing from someone who's actually been to the games. Wow, what a thrill! Go and subscribe to that. Subscribe to that right now. But Shaughan, we'll finish it there. And if you're going to a game this weekend, please enjoy your football. But unlike Darren Lumsden, who told everyone the number 88 was tattooed on his face, a tribute to his dead father, who died in 1998, but is very much still, as far as we know by the year 2020, very much still alive and kicking. Please do so respectfully. Thank you. Take care.
Oh dear.